All right. Hello, everybody. It having reached the hour of 5:30 p.m., I am calling the April 16th, 2025 Community Police Review Board meeting to order. Before proceeding, I would just like to provide the board members some guidance on how to use the technology at the dais. To speak, you will need to use the mics, which are activated by pushing the talk button or the push button, and you'll need to wait for the chair to acknowledge the speaker before proceeding to talk. Will the clerk call the roll?
Member Beasley Day, Member Bryant, Member Byrd, Member Christensen, Member Demrell.
Here.
Member Smith, Member Hahn,
Here.
Chairman Solorio.
Here.
Chairman Solorio, Board Member Grant is absent this evening. We would like to ask the board to consider his request for an excused absence, which meets our criteria for granting of an excused absence. At this time, we ask for a motion from the board to grant him an excused absence.
I motion.
Second. Oh, Yeah.
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay, do any of the board members have any conflicts of interest pertaining to items listed on the agenda? Seeing none. As noted on the agenda, public comments will only be in person. Zoom will still be available for viewing and wordly translation. And does anyone wish to speak on any item under public comment? This is for items not on the agenda, and you have 3 minutes to speak. We have one? Okay, and these are for items not on the agenda. Perfect.
Evening. All right, there we go. Just wanted to speak on possibly wanting to hear more about the shooting that had occurred, specifically Jimmy Lee Rupe, the Dale Road shooting. And I know that there was a post on, like, March 18th by MPD. And so we want to just kind of bring up, like, can we kind of see if we can get the auditor to kind of maybe investigate that a little bit more so we can hear more about it? Because I think it's still under investigation and they're still not sure what led to the shooting. And I know that what we do see, though, is that it was mentioned, but this person did have multiple felony warrants for lewd acts with child and other ones related to firearm charges. And that's one thing that was mentioned. But regardless, where we stand in CV BIPOC is that any type of officer involved shooting, we think should be investigated in our community. So we wanted to reach out to y'all to see if y'all can support and maybe requesting more deep diving into that investigation, asking the auditor to get more involved so that we can kind of really understand what happened in that situation and whether or not that was really necessary for that shooting to happen. But that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Gillespie, do you mind kind of responding to that?
Sure, there we go. Good evening. So we are preparing a community video, a community briefing video like we always do after every officer involved shooting with multiple officers involved. In this one, it takes a little bit more time to put together. So we will be putting that out, I would say, in the next few weeks to make sure that we get it out in a timely manner. And then as far as just reminding everybody how the structure goes, our independent auditor does review all officer involved shootings after the investigations are complete. So there's a criminal investigation and an internal affairs investigation that happens at the police department level. The case is then reviewed by the district attorney's office. But once our investigation is done and complete, the independent auditor will review that officer involved shooting and provide findings in his next annual report.
Thank you. And I would also just like to add on top of that, as the chair, We are actually called after the shooting happens with the officer involved shooting. So I was called, and within about an hour and a half or so, I was able to make it out to the scene of the incident. I was kind of guided around by Lieutenant Brian Kleiber. He's not here right now, but I was there for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, asking questions, kind of looking at the scene, seeing how much work goes into it, how much investigation, all that kind of stuff goes into it. Um, Unfortunately, I can't go into detail about what happened, but I just want to let you know that we do have that responsibility as well on this board to get a phone call after officer involved shooting. We are informed of it. We do get briefed on it. We do have a little bit more details, but we're just not able to share because of the investigation. Thank you.
So, sorry, one more thing, Chair. And just, again, just so the public understands, the Independent Officer's Office is involved in our major incident review team meeting that happens, within a week or two after this officer involved shooting. So the independent auditor was present of that. So they are kept informed about what's going on. And then again, I want to reiterate, they do an ultimate review of our investigation and kind of talk about the legitimacy of that in the next annual report.
Thank you.
I think that there's a lot of faith that's placed into knowing that an independent auditor reviews things. One of the things that I have concerns with is that the timeline before when a report on that can go out. So the auditor doesn't provide a report to the community until we get these annual reports and things like that, and that could be months away. So is there any way to get a quicker response from the auditor?
So officer involved shootings, as you can imagine, are very complex, and they often take up to a year to investigate and close out from the police department. And their review, and just to reiterate, their job is not to investigate and come to a determination whether it's within policy or law, but they overall look at the department and how, and I don't want to speak for the independent auditor, he can speak for himself, but to overall look at how well and thoroughly we did our investigation and point out things that improvements or criticisms that they believe that we did within our investigation. So I would say it's very difficult for them to do that. Number one, they aren't able to do that until we complete our investigation, which could take up to a year.
So I think more clarification to the community of what the auditor's actual role and process is would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't know.
The reminder that this is not, this item is not on the agenda, so it's not publicly noticed. So the responses is brief, intended to be brief.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So then we will move on. So we are going to move on to a consent item. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hi,
Oh,
my name's Chris Parks. Live here in Modesto. In November, I'd had a roommate that I had known through my Airbnb for years. And he needed a place to stay. I let him stay. When it got to around $5,000 of him not owing me money, I told him that he had to pay or leave. He did not pay, he did not leave. I kicked him out. He contacted the police. The police told him, which they actually had told me that yes, they had told him that he could bust in my door, kick in my windows because he pays rent. I got a phone call from a police officer in a car asking, and I told him, no, I have proof. Everything is through Cash App. That's the only way I accept payment. I can show you. He does not pay rent. He's been milking me and taking my kindness as a weakness. And he put me in the hospital, cracked my chest plate, shattered my ribs. I missed 2 months. I was bedridden, missed Thanksgiving and Christmas, couldn't do anything. my memory shot. I enter Stanford next month because I usually can remember everything. I don't have pregnant pauses, and it's on a regular basis. And I made complaints to the police department. I've done everything, and the DA didn't even press charges against him. And he's got a restraining order against him for going after his ex-wife's husband or boyfriend. And because of the threats he made against me, that's why I was like, I got to get him out. And the police allowed him to break into my house and beat the shit out of me for about 20 minutes before calling the police.
I'm very sorry to hear that, sir. I don't know if there's anyone here that this gentleman might be able to talk with and reach out to help him with the situation. Thank you. Thank you for your comment, sir. And we have one more public comment.
Hello.
Hello.
I wanted to see if we get a status on Joseph Lamatia's arbitration. It's been, I believe, 2 years that nothing's happened. If we could get a status on what's going on with the arbitration or if it's going to happen. Also, April 24th, we've made Trevor Seaver Day. We ask everybody in the community if you could do an act of kindness in honor and memory of Trevor. So I just wanted to ask everybody on this, if I could give you a card and ask you to do an act of kindness on April 24th would have been Trevor's 34th birthday. If you could do an act of kindness that day in honor and memory of him, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You want me to leave those?
Leave them with Simi if you may. Thank you. Another public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. It's sometimes rare. I know that I don't always see eye to eye with everyone in this chamber, but if I have something positive to share, I figure why not? I'm very pleased with the agenda topics for today. I know we were hammering out the calendar for the upcoming agenda. One of the things that came up in discussion from that was an update on the Officer at School program, and we're always lucky when we get to have Stephen here with us in person. So it just feels like a very responsive agenda. So on the back end, I appreciate what y'all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? Okay, I'll be closing out public comments. Okay, on to consent item. Consider approving the minutes from the Community Police Review Board meeting on February 19th, 2025. Do we have a motion?
All motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. On to item 4, new business. Update on Officers at School program, a presentation from staff.
So as he's coming up here, because he probably won't do the best job introducing himself, but this is Detective Sean Dodge, who's going to be presenting today. He's our school engagement officer, has done a fantastic job for the last few years working with our youth in our schools, and he'll talk about what he does. And he's also has taken lead, and if those of you who've been a part of our Healthy Room project, has taken a lead on that and continues to to work with that initiative to, again, provide healthy rooms for youth in our area. So Sean is doing everything youth in our department, and couldn't be more happy to have him in this position. He's the perfect person for it. So with that, turn it over to you, Sean.
Well, thank you and good evening. You know, this is absolute blessing, to be honest. I was getting ready to retire. I'd been with the Modesto Police Department at that time, 26 years, approaching 28 years at this point. And, you know, I joked with the chief when this was brought up of I would have done this for free. Because this truly is my passion. I do want to apologize. We will be skipping over a lot of the slides because I didn't know really how long that I had to present. There's a billion videos and a billion things going on. I was talking to a couple of you about, you know, we really are just throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks. And I'll tell you, a lot of it's sticking. A lot of it is just engaging with these kids, letting them be heard and allowing them to be with us. So real quick, let's see if I can, it's not doing anything. Oh, there we go. So I started in 97. I was a DARE officer about a year, PAL director for about a year and a half, SRO for about a year. My goal when I started the police department was to go into SVU, Special Victims Unit. I have a passion for working with kids, and I did that for about 15 years. At that point, I was about burned out. But I started engaging with youth prior to that. I had a nonprofit. Some of you may know I used to run in gear, marathons in gear, and that was a lack of common sense a lot of the time, running all over the nation. But I made some great partnerships through this that really stretched me and encouraged me to think outside the box, I guess, with community engagement. This CalVIP grant that came along about 3 years ago now was that opportunity to see if we can make it bigger. This grant entails 7 different schools. So we have Mark Twain Junior High School, Robertson Road, Kirshen, James Marshall, Burbank, Franklin, and Aspire University Charter. But we also partner with different organizations over in West Modesto, Southwest Modesto. Just because I have 7 there doesn't mean I engage with 7. For example, on an average week, I was going to 20 schools a week. That was through a program called 10K with a Cop and through a program, it was basically 10 minutes to win it. We'd play football and stuff like that during lunch with the junior highs. So real quick, I get involved in safety fairs throughout the city of Modesto, junior cadets. It's more for junior high so that they understand what law enforcement is. So we sit down, instead of me teaching to them, I say, hey, what do you think about this? And we'll talk about certain things. And sometimes we'll do little obstacles like this boy here. This is actually elementary. I'll show you this in a sec. But actually, I'll do it right now. But I'll do this with some of the junior highs as well. So what he'll do is a dummy drag right here, and it's just giving them the opportunity to maybe do something a little bit different as well. I explained to him that this is what we have to do to get through police academy. We have to do a dummy drag. We have to be physically fit, and we're put under pressure a lot of times as well. So that they get a little bit of understanding of where we're coming from. The Healthy Room Project, which I'll talk a little bit more about, we're leading the nation at this point as far as pouring into these kids and providing a safe environment for these kids to study, sleep, and play. I have departments like Boston Police Department, Los Angeles Police Department, Dallas Police Department talking and saying, how are you able to achieve what you are able to achieve? And it's all about community. It's not about me just holding it all in and keeping it to myself, but reaching out to people like you and saying, hey, I need help. I have a kid sleeping on a floor, and can you help me? We did a project with one business today. We impacted 4 kids. We redid their entire bedroom, and we'll see some of this stuff here in a sec. Kindergarten cop, I believe it or not, can still sit crisscross applesauce right in front of you. I can finger paint. I can say my ABCs, and that's what I do. I'll sit down with the kids and interact as a kindergarten student. These kids will start kind of helping me with some of the questions and stuff like that. But it's the rule is I'm not a police officer. I'm a student in this classroom, and let's have some fun. I do it with junior high too, and I got a D in math. Got a D in math. Thank you very much. 10 minutes to win it. It's a football, volleyball, basketball program. We have 10 minutes to play a sports. We're running around, I'm refereeing, and this is all for junior high. Believe it or not, I've seen 8th grade and 7th grade students running out to the field to play. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. You know what? I'll hear cussing. I'll hear the bad words and stuff like that. And I tell them, you know what? I'm not the language police, but you're smarter than that. You're a lot smarter than that, because you know what? If I start playing language police with these kids, a lot of times they're going to shut down. They don't want to talk to me. Now I'm the enforcer and the bad guy. So you know what? You're much smarter than that. Let's try dealing with this in a better way. Recess play program is 10K with a cop. Again, it's a running program. We just have a very short and very unorganized opportunity to do 10K with a cop at recess. Save me a seat, working with junior high schools, hanging out, eating lunch with the kids, and doing sports and activities, which is put on by the leadership programs at Mark Twain Junior High School and the administration over there. And then I'll take part in, actually back up there, Sierra Vista, start mentoring some of the kids. I'll meet with them for an hour throughout the week, kind of pour into them, talk about what's going on, and start talking about how do they overcome or become more resilient in the future. And last thing, back to school nights, carnivals, etc. So 10K with a cop was launched in 2017. I was SVU at that time, and you know, it was a little bit hard. My days off, my weekends, my first mornings, and at the end of the night, end of the day, I was out at the schools running circles with the kids, teaching resiliency, talking about, hey, everybody has a superpower. Your superpower is going to be different than mine. You're good at coloring, drawing. You're better at sports than I am, whatever it may be. Use that superpower to pour into somebody else in the community, make your community better, make everybody around you better, pour into your family, and pour a little bit of love with the superpower that you've been blessed with. We combine that with running. So we'll have that conversation and go forth. Let's run. Let's have fun. Believe it or not, running is fun. But you know what? You learn goal setting there too. When we start in October, most of these kids can't even complete a mile, but they're setting a goal of doing a 10K by the end of the year. 10K, that's a lot for a 3rd to 6th grade child. But I'll tell you what, we have 3rd to 6th grade children finishing 6.2 miles at the end of the year. And it's a matter of breaking it down month by month. Okay, next month, we're doing 2 miles. Next month, we're doing 3 miles. And we'll meet at different schools throughout the community so that they can show off their school, that they can have a little bit of pride in it. Now, we started in 2017, led up to COVID. We survived through COVID. We continued to go right after COVID restrictions were done. Kids came back. And we actually, originally, we're doing it at the police academy. We're doing all stuff. But you know what? Let's celebrate Modesto. Let's do something pretty cool. So every year in March, we do a 5K, a 10K, celebrating these kids, and a 2-mile community walk free to the public. What I found is the parents are starting to show up. They want to know, wait, what's this creepy cop doing with these kids? And you know what? They want to be a part of it too. They're setting goals and running with their families. They're making signs and supporting their kids. So this was the very first one that I'll show you. This was our very first one. The numbers weren't what they were this year. This year, we're over 1,000 runners out there. More than half of them were kids under 18 years old, which shows that it's making an impact. Kids, 3rd through 6th grade,
with the goal at the beginning of the school year to do a 10K, 6.2 miles. So it's all about goal setting. Once a month, we're adding to that mileage to the point that they're out here doing something like this and celebrating with the community. How does this benefit the community? So if you notice, there's a lot of parents out here too. We have found that law enforcement running with the kids. Now the parents want to know what's going on. They're showing up. They're actually running with the kids. They're cheering on the kids. And it's bringing the whole family together out here just to celebrate the awesome community we have out here. It's just where you 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, a 2-mile walk with a cop. I think it's cool just seeing all the cops, all the different people coexisting, just having a good time in the event. Okay, signing off.
So that was a high school production company through Johansson High School that actually did that video. Why not hire somebody, pay them, pour into their community or their mission and encourage that. So went through 10K with a cop, I was starting to notice something. Kids were wearing ratty shoes. Some of them were breaking down. Clothes maybe were bad. Hygiene was bad. There are a variety of things. But some of the teachers would also share stories of kids going home, sleeping on the floor, sharing a bed with a sibling, stuff like that. I'm going to skip this video. I apologize. So through this, I have a friend that was from Hawthorne Police Department, very dear friend, that him and his wife she was with the FBI, he was Hawthorne Police Department, decided to teach his daughter valuable lessons of, hey, be thankful for what you have. Just appreciate it. And they'd take the daughter over to some homes over in the projects, over into Watts specifically, to redo rooms for kids that were at risk. No bed, sleeping on egg crates, whatever it may be, so that they may be able to get a good night's sleep. And they would provide a bed, desk, dresser, painted room. And he approached me with this idea 3 years ago. I'll show you a project that we're going to do, or we did about a month ago, and I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Shows us what this means to one family. A family of 5 struggling to make ends meet. We've been hurting for a long time, but now there's a light. So much at the end of the tunnel, and I needed to change. Dialing 911 turned into an opportunity to help beyond the call.
Law enforcement on a regular basis goes out to homes. We see kids that are sharing a bed, maybe sleeping on the floor.
I get a lot of calls, and I see a lot of people, and I'm very empathetic. Anyways, there was something about them. I couldn't get out of my head. And she did not. Instead, Officer Schuler jumped into action. They needed beds. They wanted a fan. A fan in their room. Kid asked for a fan. Then they pay rent. That was the moment she knew the Healthy Room Project could lend a hand. I thought, these people really need some help. I want to help them. 6-year-old Casey even stepped in to build. I think I'd rather go like kids. That's all really roll over here. They just got like, what am I turn you around for her? Yeah. They like to see the smile on my face. Everyone working together, painting the room Casey's favorite color. My windows gonna be all pink. And helping her grandma see the final result. I can't stand. So I have no hope. So I think somebody come in and help me. From ear to ear, each volunteer lit up the rooms.
It's a lot to make traffic officers smile. And
Bringing tears to the family. I feel left and warmth to the officers.
Having the ability to not only provide your grandchildren with a better life that I want to give them, but maybe even participate and help with families here. Many that I have a direct relationship with that I've met and I see the need, I think they're going to do a little bit more back to them as well.
In Modesto, yeah, we got nice sheets underneath for egg. I'm on Beach Jafari, KCRA 3 News. So happy with their new event there. The Healthy Room Project is always looking for volunteers and donations. For more information, go to kcra.com.
It's simple. Provide them a safe environment, provide them with a bed, a desk, a dresser, but there's a little bit more to it. If anybody went through my phone right now, I have every family that we've had done room for. Every 2 to 3 months, I'm reaching out to that family, seeing what resources they need. We joined forces with Save Mart, where we're starting a new program from Sacramento to Bakersfield, providing law enforcement with emergency food boxes for families in need if they come across it, called the Healthy Foods Project. Each of the families that are getting the Healthy Room Project are getting healthy food as well. Since Monday, just this week, I think we are at 16 kids that we did this week alone. There's a need. There's a need. And we're finally, I think, getting enough street cred, I guess you could say, credibility out there, that there's other organizations saying, hey, we got this kid, whether it be CPS, whether it be Sierra Vista, Modesto City Schools. We're getting these nominations, and these aren't kids that are getting a reward. These are kids that are sleeping on the floor. Most of the time, it's a kid causing a problem in class. It's not the kid that's doing good in class. And you know what? They need a little bit of love. They need a little bit of love too. But what's really cool about this, again, and I think I said this earlier, other agencies are trying to figure out how we are able to achieve what we're able to achieve. Bakersfield had a great idea. We were approached with it about a year and a half ago, where now their academy is required to do a Healthy Room Project before they hit the street. They finished police academy. They're ready to hit the streets. They have to do a Healthy Room Project in Bakersfield. Modesto, Chief Gillespie's completely on board too. When they first start, before they're hitting the street, they're doing a healthy room. And then I go there and remind them, remember this family, you have a connection right now. You know somebody right now in this community that you can follow up with. You need to remember that not everybody in this world is bad. That most everybody in this world is good and wants good. And you know what? Sometimes we get jaded. I've been there, but you know what? This is really, it's warmed my heart. I've seen traffic officers smile, SWAT guys high-fiving and scratching their head as to how to put together IKEA furniture. It's amazing. It's amazing. Everything is brand new what we provide these kids. I'm not giving them hand-me-downs. I'm giving them brand new furniture. IKEA is easy to put together after you do it about 20 times. But you know what? They deserve new. They deserve that. They deserve that extra love, and they deserve a lot more follow-up. Most of the families that we're involved with, they're the single parent homes, mostly mom in the house, and that's it. So, you know, that need is definitely there. I want to go back over just to my numbers. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but our numbers, Mark Twain provided this to us just last year. Unfortunately, I don't have this year's numbers yet. Those probably won't be available until the end of the year. But I do go to Mark Twain on a weekly basis. Suspension rates dropped by just over 11% in 21-22, dropped another 8.45 in 2022 to 2023, and 23 to 24, another 5%. Student suspensions have dropped dramatically, more than half, actually more than 3/4. And then the attendance rate has gone up. They've also noticed that mental health services have decreased by 35%. Now, you know, when I was talking to the chief about this, yeah, there's probably other resources being poured into it, but I can guarantee me being over there has made a difference. And I'll take full credit for being part of that, or the officers that are showing up now and being a part of that. So yes, I think that does make a difference. In fact, one of the student administrators had said Project Success, which is the grant that we're operating under, is making a significant difference in enhancing student participation, motivation, and academic achievement, ultimately contributing to the overall success and well-being of its students. Sorry, I messed that up a little bit. It's working. And I truly believe that an officer in a school bridges that gap of trust with these kids. So I think that's all I really should be sharing at this point, just because I know you guys have a busy schedule and a busy agenda. I do want to open that up to questions as well. But real quick, and I should show them the reveals. Do you guys mind if you see some reveals? So Healthy Room Project. At the end of every project, we do a big reveal. Now, we've done it a variety of ways. The very first time we went out with the big SWAT truck, come out of the house, get them out, pull them into the truck. We took them over the gospel mission. Probably not the best way to do it, but then we introduced them to the house. That was my first time doing it. But we've also painted alongside on a weekend, done it with the kids. And you know what? Conversation happens there more organically and more on their terms or our terms. Sometimes it's like you stand back and you're like, who's going to talk first? Is it going to be the SWAT guy or is it going to be the kid? And you just sit there and watch. And it does happen. But we do a big reveal at the end, which is just beautiful. You're going to watch. I have hundreds of these. They always bring a tear to my eye because I know each of these kids intimately. I know their family. I know their situation. But just sit back, enjoy. Oh, can you start the video maybe? So there was a girl in there, see her crawling around. That's her closet. That's her bedroom. We've been able to convert bedrooms or make bedrooms out of garages, living rooms, hallways, closets. That very last one was a new recruit. That's his first experience as a police officer. Do you think that's going to leave an impact? You betcha. Left an impact for me, and I've been a cop for 28 years. So with that, I think I leave it up for questions. Is that right? I don't know if I need to go all the way over where it says questions, but.
I have a comment. I know Brad and Nico and I are on. Got it? Okay. Brad and Nico and I are on the subcommittee to come up with ideas to help reduce arrests among youth, especially Latino youth. And I really think you're on the right track with this. And I think this is a great program. Great.
Thank you very much.
And I look forward to telling more people about it.
Please do.
What numbers do your step counter bring you at the end of every week?
Yeah.
Doesn't
Quite a few.
sound like a one-man job, but it sounds like you do most of this yourself.
It keeps me busy. It's my hobby. It's a passion. You know, a lot of people like, I guess, say boating, flying a kite, whatever it may be. Mine's this. I get in trouble every now and again because I don't turn it off. And my wife has to rein me in, but I'm blessed with a wife that actually pours in this too. She's administration over at Davis High School due to retire, and hoping that we can hire her through the Healthy Room Project on a nonprofit to help me keep a little bit more organized for years to come. The hope is to re-engage with these kids, and it's going to take time. It's a matter of setting that example. I know that the chief is very passionate about making this happen and getting more of us out there, more Sean Dodges, I guess, but I don't know. There's somebody that can think more outside the box than even me and have more creative ideas. And, I'm just setting the stage for somebody else. I'll be forgotten here years to come, but I'm hoping that stuff like this continues.
Not likely you'll be forgotten. When you say you go to 20 schools and you do an hour a week at Mark Twain, I mean, you fit all that in every week?
Yeah. Yeah. From October to March is very busy. It really is. I start school at 7:30 and I'll get off at, 4:00-ish, right in that area when after school programs are in there. But again, I benefit from this in many ways. First of all, I'm a runner. I think I said in the beginning, I ran marathons in gear. I have a marathon next week. Hey, I get my exercise while I'm out there training with the kids, and no better way to do it with a vest and a belt on too. So I'm getting some good work out there too. But no, it is a passion of mine. My off time, I'm working with kids too in different capacities.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I hope that there's someone that comes along to shadow you for at least 2 years before you retire.
There are a couple that have dropped in and realized it's quite a bit, but there are a couple that want to continue showing up. I have one guy that continues to show up to the healthy rooms, and it may be just the healthy rooms that person focuses on. That's great. We'll find somebody else to focus on something else.
So when the officers do that with you right now, are they on their time?
Yes. No, I apologize. They are on duty time. I misunderstood you. So they are allowed to do it on duty. For example, the officer joined us today. He's got the freedom in his assignment to be able to go out there and do that stuff. They do have to get it approved by their supervisor, but that has been approved, and it's been approved by the chief as well.
It's a smart investment.
Yeah, and we do have people that do show up off duty on their own time, because that's always an option as well. But yeah, if we can allow it, we allow officers on duty to do it as well.
Does anyone else have any questions on the board?
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm happy to share more anytime.
I do have a question for you. You said this was a grant?
Yes, California Violence and Prevention. No, California Violence and Prevention. So it's a grant that's for 3 years.
3 years.
I know the city of Modesto or Modesto Police Department is looking at reapplying in the future. And I think that's probably going to happen because the guy that came out to evaluate us was pretty impressed.
How much more time do you guys have with the current grant?
It's till December, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we'll reapply, but either way, we're going to continue this program. So obviously, if we can get grant funding to help pay for it, because that's what Sean does full time now. So this is as as you pointed out, this is a full-time plus job, and that's what he does as his job now. He's worked in our special victims unit for a long time, but we moved him over, and we'll continue this regardless of whether we get funding or not.
Okay, so currently there's no funding from the Modesto Police Department budget that goes towards this?
The CalVIP grant pays for his position.
Okay, but
And-
like any MPD funding,
Or does it pay for his position, or was that in kind? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure. And what was the question, the second question?
just like any Modesto Police Department funding, like does it go towards, is there anything in your budget that actually goes towards the project besides paying for his position?
No, the only other thing that comes out of our budget is the on-duty time. That's not covered by the grant. That is just eaten up by us when officers go out on their own time. But his salary is paid for by the grant.
By the grant. Perfect. Thank you. Is there any other questions here from the board?
Yeah, I first of all, commend you for initiating this program and for the length of time that you've been with it. Do you have partners in the community as far as businesses, corporations, that sort of thing? I know you mentioned that the program accepts donations. There was a connection with the business community.
Yes, at the beginning, it was just us. At this point, we have Save Mart. We have several, actually, we've got several organizations. I think we counted up to 50 organizations locally that are pouring into it, either financially or, I know a guy, hey, we can get the food, or, it's a variety of things. So we do find the funding every single time. If I go out to a board and say to Kiwanis Rotary and say, hey, I know a kid that's sleeping on the floor, I'm walking out with money to be able to help that family. And in fact, I may even have some volunteers from that organization as well. Ultimately, the Healthy Room is just to finish with that positive experience with law enforcement. However, it doesn't keep community members from being a part of it. Just that I really want an officer out there so that the kid can say, cop, good experience, happy. But you know what? It takes a village. It's not going to just be law enforcement. It's going to be community members like you that are going to be able to help this program succeed and continue to grow.
And Brad, did you have something?
Yeah, I just, if we ever get close on the money, you need to let us know. As I think that might be a good project for us as a board to raise funds for this, to do some activities out in the community, and the purpose is to put back into the community through this. Because this doesn't cost anything compared to the benefit that happens. Some of those kids are not going to go to jail because they had a positive experience when they were third graders, and I think that's really important to do that. And that's kind of what our little subcommittee is about, is to try and figure out ways to, connect. It's all about connection, and I really appreciate you keeping the cop part of it. Is very important. It's the impetus for this whole thing. And well, somebody like me, it'd be great, but it really has to be along with the police, because it really does build relationships, and that's what's important.
Relationships and trust. And, over the years, it's taken a hit. The last 3 years have been a little bit rough, but I think we're changing that narrative quite a bit.
Thank you.
I think just to add on what you said, Mr. Hahn, is that we steal stuff from other agencies that we see as well. Manteca has for many years, a couple decades, I think, started a Manteca Police Chiefs Nonprofit Foundation. And what they've been doing, at least the last year, if not the last 2 years.
2 years, yes.
2 years, is they have an annual fundraiser dinner, where this past year we went to, and they actually, they have where they auction off things, and there's a cost to go to the dinner by, people, and tons of community organizations and people show up, and they actually have donated a ton of money for the Healthy Room Project there in Manteca. So we're looking at things like that to help continue to fund these things, because these rooms do cost money. And then, Chair, to answer your question, I was thinking about it. We do have other aspects where we've used asset forfeiture money to buy, I think, the medals and different things for the 10K of the cop.
We have, and the DA's office has poured asset forfeiture money into this. Jeff Legero sees the value in this as well and is pouring the money into the program as well.
Yeah, so there, where we can find the funds, we've definitely supported both the Healthy Room Project and 10K with a Cop.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I had a comment. It's sweet to watch the children and their tears and their parents' joy, but I think there's a tremendous benefit to see the officers getting involved specifically from the get-go. Reminds them why they're, what the real goal is here, is have a happy, healthy community and their contribution to it. So I applaud that for getting as many officers involved as possible.
I appreciate that. I joke about being a lazy officer because I'd rather go out in the field and play than do a report. And, it's true. I mean, you're fighting the crime. In many ways, you're preventing that crime for a long time. I mean, way in the future. It's harder to do bad when you have a personal relationship with maybe somebody that's in that profession.
Thank you.
Got a question.
Okay.
Wait, what up, Push?
You know,
Oh, come on. Hey, I have a question. How do we, as the Community Police Review Board, get involved with some of the things that you're doing?
Send me an email. You guys Brad Hodden brought up, getting involved in doing a project like that. That's a first step. And I'm not against that at all. I had a company that came out. They are not law enforcement. We went out there and did a Healthy Room project today, but I had some cops over there. And you know what? I had some construction workers crying. It's pretty cool.
So we will have, we'll have Simi or Scotty share you guys' emails with Sean, and we'll put you on the email list so that when he's sending out, asking for volunteers or people to make and where to show up, that you guys can, at your leisure, when it fits your schedule, show up to be part of those.
Yeah, we usually do one every month to 2 months. I know our next one's in June, that we have a pretty big program. We're going to take the summer off for a little bit because it gets hot. But come August, we're going to be hitting it again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I will be opening this up to the public. Is there any members of the public that have any questions on this item? Okay, we have one.
Clarifying, questions specifically or comments also? You said questions when you asked.
A comment as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that presentation, Officer Sean. I was particularly interested in the "Are we making a difference?" slide, and I appreciate that you acknowledged that the work you're doing is perhaps only one part of that equation. Because when I look at this, I see what is inconclusive info. And I said that not as a condemnation, but it truly as a curiosity, in which I'd be interested in more info, perhaps having this be an annual report that comes through this committee. Because when I look at this, I see what might be a spurious correlation. My school that I teach at is not one of the 7 identified schools. And we've seen really similar trends in our suspensions rates, in our attendance rates, and our mental health services. And I would attribute a lot more of that to students reacclimating to the school setting after the COVID-19 pandemic than I would from the particular programs. But again, it's inconclusive. I can't know, which is why I want more information. So it truly is a curiosity, not a condemnation. When I look at this, the statistician in me says, well, it feels cherry-picked, but that feels like too strong language because, again, I can't know with the information provided here. But I do think trust building and relationship building is really important. And to that end, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of young people. This year alone, I've asked hundreds of kids, what changes would you want to see on campus? What would make you feel safer? I'm on my school's safety committee. I've never once had a student say they want more cops on campus, certainly not cops that have their weapon and holstered as it may be while they're on that campus. I don't think that contributes to a relationship of trust and relationship building. If there are going to be officers on campus, and I don't know that necessarily that there should be, I'd still want more information. But if that's the route that we're going to go as a community, I'd much rather see people without their weapon present, at the very least with a taser over a gun, but certainly not a gun. Because again, none of the students in any of their responses ever said they wanted more cops or more guns on campus. But I am also optimistic when I see things like Healthy Room and Healthy Food Project. And I'd like to see more of the police budget go towards causes like that. Um, Specifically, I know that I've talked in this chamber before about the militarization of the police department. I would love to see some of our funds that go towards militarized equipment go towards projects like Healthy Food or Healthy Room Project instead. And while I think those programs could still be successful if divorced from the police department, and it'd be remiss of me not to say that there's clearly joy in the hearts and the minds of the people that are being helped by those programs, and I can't discredit that, nor would I want to. But I do think there's probably potential for exploring non-police alternatives to similar programs. But I don't want to speak for my students while I've read their writing on what they think would make the school safer. I would reiterate a point I've made previously when we were at the King Kennedy Center, that I really do think that a youth representative, someone in the K-12 age group on this committee's board, would be really helpful in the future and speak to youth on campus issues far better than I could. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Are there any other members of the public? We have one more.
All right, y'all. So yeah, we are kind of in disagreement about this. You may not like what we say, but community members, and hopefully y'all get a different perspective when you come here. But essentially, yeah, such projects do sound great. But what we want is that we don't want a dependency on police for these things, folks. These look like jobs that specifically fit the roles and responsibilities of teachers, of social workers, public health workers and stuff. And the thing is that making a difference and working in education, I feel like that is taking credit for the work of the educators, the work of the administrators, and the district itself. Because I also have been to Mark Twain working with teachers and students. I've also been to Franklin working with teachers and students. And I know the grassroots efforts that they have made as well. And I don't want to take that like credit away from them, because they have been making lots of improvements. And what we would rather have is we want more of that funding for the teachers to be at that capacity, for the social workers who have too many caseloads to have the capacity to do that. And it bothers us that we are getting funding and grants specifically for police to do that work when these types of positions are getting cut. The G230 teachers in the high schools who are trying to get kids to graduate, those positions have been cut. The student support administrators, their positions have been cut and moved around. And that's what bothers us, because what happens is when we have that dependency, it seems like there could be a reason for that and stuff. And it says to change that narrative of views on the police, but I feel like it's doing so without addressing the actual reasons that cause that distrust of police. And we've been talking about it, such as the broken windows policing that harms communities, low-income communities, the disproportionate use of force against folks of color. And what ends up doing is having actually cops on campus has been proven to give more cops access to children. And in this case, what we do see is that the number one cause of youth deaths, it's gun violence. And we have folks entering these campuses with guns. How does that make it a safe community? Where we have pictures from Parks and Rec, they're playing with kids, but they're holding on to their guns. And I do not think that is safe. And I do not think that is something that we should normalize. I do also agree with what my colleague had said. We shouldn't be having guns around kids at all. That's not a safe space for kids at all. And what we end up seeing too is that having more students on more cops on campus actually increases the number of arrests in youth. There's a variety of studies for that, for like 40%, over 40% of schools having police and 69% engaging in school discipline enforcement. Mark Twain had police get called on to arrest a kid. And that is definitely something that is not needed to kind of give them folks more access to that. I know my time is done, but thank you for that time.
Thank you for your comment. We have another member from the public. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I just kind of want to reiterate what my friends have been saying. People need help in our community. We know that. However, while this was a grant, I really think we need to divorce these things from the police. Police train people to obey them. And if they're not obeyed, they can be shot. And so when we're talking about building relationships with the kids, that's good, but it's so that they obey the police officers. And so what we need is to be building a community that is not building relationships out of fear, not building relationships so that people conform to the authority. Because at the end of the day, seems like a really great program, but seeing the guns on the holsters in some of those videos really bothered me. Why are we helping people go into a safe space that's their home with guns? That's not safe. And we know this. There's a lot of gun violence that continues to happen across our country constantly and right here in our community. And so maybe we need to reorient ourselves of what can relationship building be with a police officer? Do they have to have that gun on their holster? And I do not think they need to have that gun on their holster. All that does is show people, you get out of line, this gun's right here. And that is very unhealthy for children. I've worked with children. I have worked extensively in social services, and we need more budget to go towards social services. As my friend said, they have been cutting positions with MCS. Why are we cutting from education? And we're not cutting from the police department. And I have been sickened, and I've heard from so many people in this community that continue to see these militarized equipment in our community, and they're like, why do we need this here? This isn't helping me. Well, I'm seeing poor brothers and sisters out on the street sleeping. So we need to, while this is a great program, we need to also see, do the cops need to be doing certain things? Or do we need to be putting that money elsewhere? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members from the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? We have one more.
Hey, everybody. Quick question, and sorry if I missed it in the presentation. How were the families chosen? It sounded like there was like incidents that happened and you saw a need and you kind of like.
It's on? Or is it on? Okay. So it's either nominated by social services such as CPS, Sierra Vista, the schools. There's a variety of organizations that have reached out and said, you know, we have a kid, we're aware that this kid could possibly be sleeping on a bed, and that's how they're nominated. We do have a couple times where law enforcement's gone in and seen that there's a family that's maybe in need. But at the same time, we never force the family into that. In fact, I've had a couple of those families that have turned it down in the past, and I can't do anything about that. You know, I can't force a child or a parent to provide a bed. So, you know, if they feel comfortable later in the future, they have my phone number. They're welcome to call me or text me, and we may be able to do it later on.
Oh, thanks. That was just general curiosity. I missed how they were selected. The second thing I wanted to just ask real quick, is this the first presentation from about the school police programs that have been at the meetings? Yeah. Okay. When I first heard, and I don't want to take away from the project and the presentation, but I remember when we, well, not we, I'm not on the board, but when I heard that there'd be presentations about police and schools, I thought it would be more of like a general overview about the officers that are working in schools, what their policies and procedures are, what kind of incidents there's been, kind of like an analysis of that. So a question is kind of, is that still part of the plan on the horizon kind of thing?
So Detective Dodge is the only one that we have in schools. We don't have any other SROs assigned to schools. So there really wouldn't be a presentation on that because we don't. Detective Dodge is the only one.
And there's no, is there a Modesto schools police?
Modesto City Schools has their own school security officers.
Security,
That they're employed by Modesto City Schools.
okay. I know that it's been recommended in, not here, but in other places that that there's been like more incidents when you have a separate department for schools. And there's actually been like less incidents with like between officers and students when the city's police department it's actually like doing that. That's just something I'll try to find a citation for it, but I know I just heard that. So I was just curious if that's interesting that he's the only officer that goes into schools. The third thing I just want to say, and kind of, you know, in agreement with with the other comments about, the relationship between public funding for programs that do things like this. Again, don't want to take anything away from the work that you're doing, but it is a valid point to be made. And I think that it fits with the February meeting that was at the King Kennedy Center where Judge Villalobos talked about the programs, and there was a discussion about, the opportunity to fund social programs, social workers programs in schools, and that I mentioned a certain local elected official who said that, government funding can't solve problems, and I disagree with that. And I think, we see that this is the government, the police department is part of the government. They got a grant and they did a great project, and that, sometimes we do have to look at what is the payoff for, whether it's a raise in sales tax or other kinds of revenue that can be raised or can be taken out of other parts of the budget that can go into programs like this. That's all I want to point out, in kind of agreement with the other comments that were made. I think it's a very valid point. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this item? Alrighty, seeing none, we'll close public comments. And anyone from the board, are there any other further comments about this item? Okay, seeing none, we will be moving on to an independent police auditor annual report. A presentation from Steve.
Thank you, Chair Solorio, and good evening, everybody. It is not a great idea to be presenting after somebody who's talking about animals or really cute children. So I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball before we're even starting here, but I'm gonna do my best. Thank you for having me back. As the slide says, this is the second audit report that the Independent Police Auditor Office, which is staffed by OIR Group, is presenting to your board regarding the second annual independent audit of the Modesto Police Department. Next slide, please. So if you indulge me for a minute, and there we go. This is all stuff that's very familiar to you folks. I hope you don't mind if I replow this ground a little bit just to provide a reminder for people in attendance tonight, anybody who might be watching, any members of the public who might be watching remotely. So OIR Group was selected as the IPA for the city of Modesto, the first independent police auditor for the city of Modesto back in the spring of 2023. OIR Group has been providing independent oversight of law enforcement agencies throughout California and in other jurisdictions as well. It's a private firm that specializes in police practices, and we have a lot of experience working with different places and seeing how different entities do things and working on best practices with policy and procedure and so forth. And as you all know particularly well, we are part of the hybrid model that the city of Modesto arrived upon in the aftermath of the Forward Together project, where a number of people in the community, including some of you folks, participated for a long time and just talking about reimagining some services in the cities and some approaches that the city is taking with the idea of improving the community and meeting needs where they were identified. One of those ideas that came out of it in terms of recommendations was an interest in having increased outside oversight of the police department. And your board is a component of that. We all got started at about the same time back in June of 2023. And your board is obviously comprised of residents of the city who have a special understanding and insight and investment in the community. And then OIR Group is the other piece of that. And as we focus on police practices, that's our area of expertise. It's my full-time job doing this kind of work here in Modesto and in other places. And the other aspect of the model besides your board is to have OIR Group provide auditing services, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that entails. Thank you. So what's in terms of this particular report and the functions of OIR Group in Modesto, those are all framed by the scope of work and the ordinance that the city passed back when all of this was being formed in the aftermath of Forward Together. And the audit report that is the focus of my presentation tonight involves a review of kind of framed, pre-designated categories. And you can see them on the slide there. It's complaints and allegations of misconduct, uses of force by Modesto police officers, and critical incidents involving Modesto police officers. And the content of my report that I'll be talking about tonight were cases across these categories that were completed in 2024. Next slide, please. So in terms of the goals, in terms of what the IPA is hopefully contributing to the idea of oversight and police community relations, there are three major components of it. One of them is transparency. This is a level of detail and a level of scrutiny that is unprecedented here in Modesto as far as having an outside entity have this kind of access to otherwise confidential files and records, with the idea of assessing their legitimacy and providing some information to your board and to the public about these important functions that the department is entrusted to handle internally. There is increased accountability that comes as a function of this scrutiny, and the way that it has worked out here in Modesto in particular is that we make our report, we make our recommendations, and then it just doesn't end up on a shelf somewhere thanks to your board's engagement with it and the department's willingness to engage. The second piece of this process is for the department to digest these recommendations and come back to you to give a subsequent presentation either next month or a couple months from now, in which the chief is going to respond to each of the 12 recommendations included in this year's report and respond to any questions you have. So that's one component of accountability. We don't have the power to force the police to do anything. We don't weigh in on investigations that are pending and say, hey, this is the wrong decision, you should change it, and I'm ordering you to do this or that. We don't have that kind of role. We don't have that kind of authority. That's not the way that this is set up or intended. But what we do have is the ability to review these things, to make assessments about them. And if we had concerns, if we were troubled by things that we were seeing in terms of the way the department approached these processes, in terms of the objectivity and legitimacy and thoroughness with which the department responded to public complaints or looked at a use of force incident and assessed officer performance, if we looked at the department's own internal systems and found them to be wanting in important ways, we would certainly be able to share that with you. Fortunately, with some minor exceptions that prompted some of the recommendations in this year's report, that has not been my perspective in the year and a half, 2 years that I have been doing this. The basic impression that I have and that the report is meant to convey is that these processes, while there's always room for improvement, the department absolutely takes these things seriously. They do review and investigate public complaints in an objective fashion and do their best to reach appropriate outcomes. And the recommendations here are really intended to take a system that is very sound and to try to improve some of the particular elements of it, again, just based on our experience and seeing the way other places do it, and focusing in on some issues that recurred maybe in some of the investigations. And we'll talk about that more as we go along. And that last goal there, ideally, is going to be systemic improvement. And last year, I was very gratified by the police department's willingness to, first of all, take my recommendations seriously and to actually make concrete changes as a result of some of the recommendations in terms of changing their own practices, updating policies, and really taking the recommendations seriously and not necessarily embracing all of them wholeheartedly, but certainly looking for ways to make the department better if they thought that there was validity to them, which is of course certainly a big part of what we're here to do. We would like to see the department be as effective as it possibly could be for the sake of the community as a whole. Next slide, please. So we're going to be talking here at the level of kind of a high pass level. We're not going to get into the weeds of individual cases, but the actual individual cases that the department completed in the previous year do form the basis for my assessments and the recommendations that are included here. So we take a look at completed cases, and again, the scope of work sort of defines what those are going to be. We don't look at every single case. The volume of them would be probably too high for that to be realistic. But there are certain cases that we look at all the examples of. Any allegation of biased policing, we're going to see all of those. Whenever a supervisor is involved, we're going to see all of those. And then we're going to take a sampling of other cases, again, in an effort to get a wide-ranging look at how the department is responding to these issues. The key concept on this slide, I would say, is that access that I've talked a lot about in the past and is a very, very important component to the mechanism of oversight here in Modesto. The access that we have, we can see all of the investigative files and records, body-worn camera recordings from these incidents that we're reviewing. And the department has been a very cooperative, collaborative partner in terms of making sure that we have the access that we need to do our job. Next slide, please. So I mentioned before there are 3 different categories of cases that are part of our scope of work. The one that I want to start talking about tonight is the officer-involved shooting cases, the critical incident review component of it. Critical incidents could refer to a number of different kinds of events, but the ones that have happened thus far during OIR Group's tenure as the independent police auditor have been officer-involved shootings. There have been 3 officer-involved shooting incidents in that time. The most recent one was just a few weeks ago, as you know, and presumably I'll have the opportunity to talk about that in the next report. And then the first 2 that, again, you have been engaged with to certainly a new extent in terms of the transparency and the involvement, as the chair was pointing out at the start of the meeting. There were 2 cases, one that happened, I believe, in June of 2023 as we were all just getting started, and then the second one was in February of 2024. Both of those, the investigative processes, the various investigative processes were completed in 2024, and so both of those got discussed in my report. So if you look at this slide, I want to go backwards a little bit and start with the items on the bottom there. And just to remind people, because it can get confusing and kind of nuanced, the different processes that are involved in the aftermath of one of these events. And this is just a very simple reminder. We can get into as much detail as you'd like, but there is a criminal investigation whenever an officer uses deadly force. That choice to use deadly force is going to be reviewed to make sure that it is legally justified, and the officers are potentially subject to prosecution if there's a determination that the force was not legally justified. So there is a full criminal investigation process. That's not the main focus of my work as an auditor. Those cases are put together by detectives and presented to the district attorney's office. The other components of it, however, are things that we do have direct involved with, as the chief was alluding to at the beginning of the evening tonight. And one of those is the administrative investigation. So along with the criminal review, the department is going to look at it administratively and say, okay, this event, it's being assessed for its legality, but we want to make sure that the officers involved in this event were acting in a manner consistent with our policies, our training, our expectations, Those things obviously overlap quite a bit with criminal standards, but they're also different. And it's important for the department to take its own eye or review process for these things and not simply rely on the criminal investigation and have that be the end of it. And then I want to go back up to the top of this slide and talk about the major incident review process, which is a new process here in Modesto and one that we are very happy to endorse. It's something that we certainly advocate for in all the jurisdictions where we work. And that concept of holistic review is something that is very fundamental to our opinion about best practices in terms of police accountability, police review processes. So there are the bottom line questions of, was this a legal thing for the officer to do? Was this in policy for the officer to do? But it has been our experience that there are so many more factors that are worth looking into, pursuing, investigating, discussing, and potentially addressing apart from those two kinds of bottom line questions, which are, of course, very, very important, but only a portion of what's there for the department to potentially learn from and adapt to. And what the Modesto Police Department has begun to do, and that coincided timing-wise with the start of your board and the start of my role here in Modesto. They have a brand new major incident review process that takes a look at these incidents in kind of a 360-degree way, and not months and months after the fact, as you were alluding to, as these other processes are working their way through the system. But within a week or two of the incident itself, the department is meeting with subject matter experts and command staff people, and they're getting a presentation, a very detailed presentation about the incident and looking at it through a variety of lenses, and not focused on the officer accountability piece of it, but looking at the decision-making, the tactics, the equipment, the post-incident medical attention, the investigative steps that were taken and how the scene was dealt with, community relations, all of those things go into the discussion. And as the chief said, we have been invited to those. They've had 3 of these events, and we have been invited to all 3 of them, had the opportunity to attend in person and to be there as the department discussed these and looked for ideas about making enhancements or adjustments, and not waiting for the district attorney's office or the other aspects of the process that can be very, very delayed and time consuming, because some of these things might be worth addressing and correcting or looking into further right away. So we are big advocates of the process. We think it's working well here in Modesto, particularly given that they are so new to it. Next slide, please. So with regard to the officer-involved shootings, we discussed both of the completed cases in a little bit of detail, and I won't go into those. I won't recap those, other than to say we agreed with the department's ultimate administrative decision that the officers who used deadly force in both of those cases were justified in doing so under the totality of the circumstances. In terms of our recommendations with regard to this process, we had a couple things that we focused on. And this can be a little bit nuanced and complicated. And again, I'm going to take this opportunity to encourage everybody. Obviously, this went out to the board, but this presentation is really meant to be a supplement to the public report that is obviously available. Yes, or will be available. It's going to be available to the public. There are copies of it in the back for people who are here tonight. But I hope everybody will really read it, and because I certainly don't want to do an injustice to any of the detailed review that occurred and the detailed work that the department has done. Our recommendations with regard to this process really focused on the post-incident day of investigation protocol. So what happens with the officers who are involved in one of these things on the day that the incident takes place? And our particular focus was on the statement from the officers. Obviously, a key issue that people want to know, apart from the body-worn camera, which has made a huge difference in providing information about these events that was unheard of 10 or 15 years ago. The body-worn cameras are obviously really, really important, but the officers' statements about their perceptions, their experience, what they were doing and responding to when they used deadly forces is a critical component in any assessment. And one thing that varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction is when that statement happens. We are proponents of a model where that statement is happening as soon as possible, and ideally it's going to happen before the end of the shift. In other words, the officers are going to be interviewed formally about what happened before going home on the day of the incident itself. That doesn't happen in Modesto for a few different reasons. And we can get into that if anybody has any questions. And there are many, many jurisdictions where the officers are not interviewed on the first night, and sometimes it's a week or 10 days later. In Modesto, in the cases that I've looked at so far, the interviews are occurring within 48 hours, I would say, in each of the cases. But we feel like rather than allowing the officers to go home and potentially be exposed to a lot of different potential interferences or sources of information that is going to just complicate things. And it isn't, certainly there's a concern among some people about skepticism about the officers getting their stories straight, but it doesn't have to be a malicious thing in our view, or a conspiratorial thing for people to just have their purest impressions or reflections about the event become complicated by outside information that they might inadvertently be exposed to between the time of the incident and an interview that happens 2 or 3 days later. So we advocate a before end of shift interview, and the department sees that differently. And there are a lot of, I think, very sound reasons why that's the case. We acknowledge that, and we talk a little bit about that in the report. But it's something that I'm sure the chief will talk about when he responds to the report later on. The other thing I want to say about the investigative protocol, and this is actually, again, something that different agencies do differently, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that I think Modesto gets this part right, which is that one of the other big splits from jurisdiction to jurisdiction has to do with when an involved officer is able to review body-worn camera recordings of the incident in relation to when they give the statement for the first time. In many jurisdictions, I might go so far as to say most jurisdictions, the officers are allowed to review their body-worn camera recordings first. In Modesto, they require the officers to give a statement first, a pure statement, if you will, and then they can watch the video, and if they want to supplement and adjust some of their answers based on new information that they're getting or having their recollections refreshed, we think that approach is the more sound one from a best practices investigation perspective, and we are pleased that Modesto has adopted this approach. So we're kind of 1 for 2 there, I guess, as we would would be one way to put it. And again, with regard to the timing, there are some complexities there. I encourage people to read the written report to get into more detail about it. Last but not least, again, acknowledging that the MERT process, the initial holistic review that happens, the coordination of that early piece with the wrap up at the end, the department, when the administrative investigation is done, the criminal investigation is done, the department convenes a shooting review board and assesses the event to make a formal determination administratively about whether the officers acted in policy or not. And we just noticed that there was a little bit of drop off between some of the action items that were identified early on during the MERT process, and then some of the points that were focused on in the final wrap up memo from the administrative review process after the shooting review board. And we would just, that's kind of process thing or a logistics thing. There's nothing malicious about it, but just in the interest of efficiency, we think that those things could be blended together more effectively. Next slide, please. So next category would be allegations of misconduct, public complaints, and internal affairs investigation. We looked at a total of 28 cases. And again, the components of those are all cases involving allegations of biased policing, all cases in which a supervisor was involved. We've always found those to be particularly sensitive because we want to make sure that supervisors are not being protected or treated more in a more biased or favorable to them way than the rank and file officers. And then we take a random sampling of other cases that we literally just identify by case number and ask for all the materials associated with them. Next slide. So with regard to these, our key takeaways, and again, we had a few different recommendations that came out of this part of the report. To reiterate the bottom line point, which I think is perhaps most important to people, we consider the process itself in its fundamentals to absolutely be a legitimate one. The department takes complaints seriously. They will try to interview people if they get a written submission and they want more detail or more information about what the person's concerns are. They're going to make sure that the investigator follows up with the complainant and have a full-blown interview that goes on as long as is necessary to get the full sense of the complainant's concerns. And the cases are going to be investigated and assessed with objectivity. In terms of other aspects of the complaint process or the internal affairs process that we identified and want to just highlight a little bit tonight, one is the whole idea of complaints as opportunities, and this is the whole holistic review concept again, this idea of maybe this not a policy violation, but in the course of reviewing this, we see things about the way the officers handled this event that could have been done differently or better, whether it's a communication or a teamwork thing between officers or an officer safety issue. And the department does take the time to move beyond the bottom line question of in policy, out of policy, violation, no violation, to say no policy violation here. However, we identified these 3 training points and we got with the officers involved to talk to them about their communication or their teamwork or putting out better radio traffic or positioning themselves better. And using these complaints as opportunities to get better is, I think, a sign of a process that is particularly effective. Last but not least, one of the things that we focused on that is certainly, I think, worthy of more consideration, and it's something your board may want to give some additional thought to, is a number of the complaints that we looked at had to do with people who had been stopped multiple times. And that was a particular source of frustration, aggravation to them. And oftentimes the initial basis for the stop was not a call for service necessarily. It was in fact a traffic stop that was based on a relatively minor vehicle code infraction, an equipment violation, a brake light is out. There was at least one where somebody's had something hanging from the rear view mirror, which is technically a vehicle code violation, but to somebody who's been stopped by the police and maybe has an antagonistic relationship with the police, being stopped in right away, it just, the temperature levels are heated. So to be clear, pretext stops are absolutely legal. That has been something that the Supreme Court has evaluated, and it's perfectly fine for officers to from a legal perspective, perfectly fine for officers to find a vehicle code violation, a moving violation, no matter how minor, an equipment violation, no matter how minor, and use that as a basis for initiating contact with a member of the public and seeing what happens from there. But there are some communities where that has been a friction point, and there's a concern that is not done in an even-handed way. It kind of goes hand in hand with allegations of bias or discrimination, and so it's something that different communities are evaluating and looking at in different ways. And again, because of the prevalence of the complaints that we happen to look at, and the complaints that alleged bias that involved this pattern where people stopped on multiple occasions and for initial violations that were relatively minor. It's something that we thought was noteworthy and maybe worthy of additional consideration. Next slide, please. Moving on to the force review process, whenever an officer uses a certain level of force and just a simple control, resisted control and takedown of someone with no injury involved, most of the force incidents in a given year are at that very low level of force where there's no injury to the officers or the involved parties. But for every time a Modesto police officer uses force, that is going to go through multiple levels of review that is not required by law, but that the department is undertaking a much more rigorous process than they would have to in terms of making sure that their officers are complying with their policies and training and expectations. So beginning with the sergeant who's maybe responding to the scene, and then going to a lieutenant and captain, there are multiple levels where everybody's going to look at all the body-worn camera, all the police reports, and really evaluate this thing in a full-fledged, holistic sort of way. And there is that word again. And one of the things that I thought was particularly impressive about the cases that I took a look at is how many of them the department said, yes, this force was justified. Yes, the force was in policy. Yes, the officer showed appropriate restraint after the person was in custody, where there wasn't excessive force or punishing force. However, we saw something here that is correctable and should be corrected, and we're going to go ahead and document our follow-up in terms of meeting with the person, providing training, documenting what that training or counseling was, sending somebody to a particular class that might be relevant to an issue that was spotted in one of these. And those are the kinds of ways that a review process goes beyond accountability, and accountability is hugely important. That's what the public obviously really cares about, but taking it also as an opportunity to improve things and make officer performance better and make the whole thing safer for officers and community members. Those are extra steps that are good to see when they happen, and it occurred in a number of cases. Next slide, please. With regard to some of the recommendations and some of the specific areas where we had moments of concern or interest based on some of the patterns that we were seeing in multiple cases. We looked at, I think, 6 different cases in which the use of the taser was one of the force options, and saw there was maybe, just based on this very small sample size, and again, just looking at it through a particular narrow window, most of the taser deployments were not effective in terms of achieving the incapacitation and allowing for the safe taking of the person into custody after the deployment. Most of them weren't effective. They didn't work. And then the other thing that we noticed was that there were at least a few instances in which officers were not providing a warning to the subject before deploying the taser. And that is actually part of the policy, that you're supposed to give a warning as long as it is practicable to do that, and not, an officer safety issue, or if you have the opportunity to give a warning, you're supposed to give a warning as a way of potentially neutralizing the situation and convincing the person to stop resisting. And there were multiple cases that we looked at where that did not happen. So our takeaway from that is, with the combination of ineffective taser deployments and the warning issue that we saw, we just basically encourage the department to kind of take a step back from the individual incidents and then look at maybe more collectively, is there a need to go back to the drawing board and talk to their folks about taser training and some of the policy requirements and officer safety features and everything else. Second category there, canine deployments. Again, we looked at, I think, 4 of the cases that we surveyed happened to involve a canine deployment. And these were, like the taser cases, the use of the dog turned out to not be effective. That either the dog didn't bite or there was something else that kind of went wrong with it. And we encouraged the department to take a look at its canine program and maybe integrate it more directly with the regular use of force protocols that it has. And what I mean by that is the K-9 is a specialized unit, a specialized tool, and they have their own training and their own requirements, and they do their own debrief every time a dog is deployed in the field, anytime there's a bite. And those things are not, from what I could tell, are not necessarily being married up as effectively as they could be with the main process in terms of making sure that shortcomings. I think that the regular use of force process was sort of deferring to the K-9 folks, and I saw a few instances where there perhaps some additional follow-up was necessary. And I'm not sure it happened. Maybe it did over with the K-9 unit, but it wasn't married up very effectively with the regular tracking of things. And last but not least, de-escalation. De-escalation is a key concept in terms of evolving public expectations of law enforcement. I think law enforcement people would tell you that de-escalation has been around as long as policing, maybe not with that particular name, but that idea of, can we take steps to keep from having to use force or to be able to use a lesser kind of force? But the public has become very interested in de-escalation as a concept, and expectations have changed about the extent to which agencies are going to focus on de-escalation in terms of their policies. They're going to require it more overtly and maybe review it and expect officers to offer more detailed explanations about what their thought process was. Could they, if they didn't de-escalate, why didn't they de-escalate? What steps toward de-escalation did they take? We talked about this in our first report last year and had some recommendations for the department, which the department was very gracious about acknowledging and embracing. It was slow to make its way into the review process for 2024, in part because it probably wasn't May or June until I had given my presentation and the chief had decided that he wanted to revamp some of the policies. So there was a little bit of lag time. And by the end of the year, I certainly saw some enhancements in officer consciousness about it and making their reports a little bit more directly referential to de-escalation concepts. And I think that the rest of the review process was more focused on it as a routine matter as well. So a lot of it has to do with taking things that are already being done in the field and just being more conscious about acknowledging them or studying them or reinforcing them. I think there's room for that. And again, I saw some positive signs by the end of the year. Simi, probably mercifully, as far as most of you are concerned, we have reached the end of my talking for the time being, but certainly happy to respond to any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Are there any members of the board that have any questions or comments for Steve?
I have one. I know that you use random sampling, but is there ever a case where a family or an attorney or the community at large could request that you look into specific cases?
That has not
has
happened
just
so
been-
far, and it's actually not part of the scope of work. To be honest, I think if there were to be a particular incident, again, in the time period, as opposed to something that happened prior to the start of the office. But if there's something that happened in 2025 and there was a request for, can you make sure that this gets looked at? I'm guessing we could probably work that out.
Nancy?
Your discussion about contextual stops I thought was interesting. And you said in the report that some agencies have chosen to restrict the circumstances in which a contextual stop could be used. And I wondered in California, what percentage or some idea of the number of agencies that have done that and in California or else nationwide?
So two things. I would say it's a very small percentage overall, but there's some pretty prominent agencies. LAPD, for example, which is the largest law enforcement agency in California and one of the 2 or 3 biggest in the country, changed to an approach where they're not stopping people solely on the basis of equipment violations. I know the city of Portland has done the same thing. San Francisco is doing something similar, but the vast majority of cities have not moved in that direction. And I will be very candid, it is not without counter arguments in LA and the places where they have implemented. There's certainly some a group of people, interested observers, who are not thrilled with the step. So it's something that has to be worked through in terms of community preferences and policy and the department's responsiveness. So it's kind of a complicated thing, but the short answer to your question is most agencies no, but some very prominent agencies yes.
How long has LAPD, do you know how long?
I
they've-
believe it's been within the last couple of years.
And also in that same discussion, you indicated about contextual stops that there was complaint about a wrongful traffic citation and impoundment of a vehicle. And I don't know, and the department found that upon reviewing that complaint, that it was not a lawful or well-based traffic stop, and the impoundment was wrong. And I wondered if we're able to ask you what happened with after that review was found by the department, or maybe we'll address that when you make your report, Chief.
Yeah, I think tonight is an opportunity for you guys to ask questions and for me to get feedback. I won't be providing any feedback to his suggestions tonight, but I can take a look at that in the specifics and make a determination whether that's something that we can share more specifics on or not.
I'm curious about that. And
Yeah.
the canine deployment that you indicated, they were, although the supervisors reviewed it and maybe commented, sometimes they didn't comment at all. But were you also able to review the canine units assessments?
I probably could have, but did not. And yeah, that is an excellent question in terms of what is being done outside the mainstream process that might be responsive to some of those things.
I have.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Steve, I went through your report, read from front to back, and of the calls that you reviewed, including the critical incidents and the officer-involved shootings and that sort of thing, I didn't see any mention in the report of any of the cases that you reviewed that involved a person with a mental health crisis. Was that something you didn't look at, or was that just wasn't present?
So it wasn't a particular focal point or lens of mine, and now that you mention it, certainly it would have been a factor in the assessment that the department conducted. And I'm going off the top of my head here, but I'm not recalling a significant number of incidents in which a mental health crisis or challenge was at the root of the encounter in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
This is where I think some more targeted evaluations need to take place, because there is a difference when you're talking about mental health cases. And if you're just doing things randomly, you could miss it. So I think that there should be some better targeting.
Is there anyone else from the board that has any questions? Okay. I did have one. I was curious on the OIS investigations for the interviews. Now, do you know, based off your knowledge, if the officers decide not to give a statement, if they're still able to review the footage after? Because I think I recall that officers can plead the fifth and not make a statement?
So you're talking about a couple of related but different
Kind of.
things. And without going too far into the weeds, there is a distinction between a criminal investigation, and you're absolutely right. Officers have Fifth Amendment rights the same way anybody else does. And so the first thing that's going to happen is that a criminal investigator is going to contact the officer and say, would you like to give a voluntary statement? Because that's entirely the officer's choice. And the officers, and again, different jurisdictions do it differently, and different officers within the same jurisdiction might do it differently for a lot of different reasons. But nobody ever has to give a voluntary statement to a criminal investigation. It's voluntary. But what sometimes happen, and I'll give you, we were talking about LAPD before, just to give you a very simple example. What generally happens in LAPD in the aftermath of an officer-involved shooting is they'll bring the criminal investigator in first. The officers, almost as a default practice because of their association's advice and just kind of the way that they have decided to approach this, the officers are going to say, no, thank you. I don't wish to participate in a voluntary criminal interview. The criminal investigators are going to leave, and then the administrative team is going to come in right behind them and basically order the officers to give a statement that is going to be used internally to evaluate the officer's decision-making in compliance with policy and everything else. And that can't be shared with the criminal investigation, because that would be a violation of their Fifth Amendment rights, because it's a compelled statement as a term of their employment. Now we're getting really deep into the weeds. In both of the cases that I looked at, the Modesto officers reviewed a transcript of their interviews and agreed to waive their rights to not have that shared with the prosecutors, and those statements were in fact turned over to the district attorney's office at a later point. Specifically, in answer to your question about the criminal investigation, the Modesto, or excuse me, about the body-worn camera video, in Modesto, they do not, even if it's 2 days later or whatever, they do not allow the officers to watch their videos prior to giving a statement, even if it's happening a couple days later. And one of the investigative protocols is to kind of lock down control of that video, because obviously it's sensitive evidence at that point. So that gets taken care of in the immediate aftermath, so that it's not going to be inadvertently accessed or shared or whatever.
Thank you. And then in regards to the canine, during that review process, were you aware of like maybe the age of the canines or anything like that? How long they've been on the force? Because I've seen in the report, it was like they weren't releasing when they were being told to be released of the bites. Officers were having a hard time getting the dog to release. Is that something that could possibly be the age of the dog, how long they've been training? And do you know if maybe the type of dog that it is that they're using could be an issue as well?
So the short answer to your question is I don't know. But I will tell you that the points that you are making are absolutely variables that go into a canine program, and that handlers and people who specialize in this are absolutely evaluating and taking a look at. If a dog is not functioning well in the field, then obviously the whole idea of retraining that dog and making sure. But dogs sometimes cycle out because they are not well suited for the task for whatever reason, and that is definitely something that is addressed internally.
Have you ever made any recommendations on the type of dog that police department should use?
I have not, and again, that's not an area of expertise of mine, but certainly there are, it's pretty well established in terms of the breeds and the breeders and the sources of police canines. It's a very, very established field. Having said that, as it says in the report, the use of canines has become a little bit controversial. There have been efforts in the state legislature that did not succeed, but in the last couple of years, legislators have proposed, hey, we're going to restrict the use of police canines or ban the use of police canines out of concern for some of the different implications of them. But those initiatives have not succeeded. My point is, it's a high-risk activity. It's obviously important. They can be an incredibly effective tool for officer safety and for neutralizing situations. And I know for a fact, and talk to the department about it, there are multiple instances where there's not a bite that happens because the dog is there and barking, and they're saying, we're going to send the dog, and the person is certainly willing to stop resisting at that point. So it's a complicated issue. My only point is, without weighing in one way or the other, keep them, don't keep them, it certainly deserves the highest level of scrutiny and protection, or scrutiny and review and investigation for a lot of different reasons.
Okay, thank you. I do have one more. It was in regards to the tasers. The failure to issue a warning prior to the use of the taser, but also the tasers weren't very effective when it came to the use of the taser. I don't know, recently we are going to be purchasing an updated taser. Have you ever had recommendations on maybe trying to use different methods besides the taser if they're not as effective, or if you know how many cases you reviewed, like a percentage that the tasers were effective versus what you
So,
said?
Again, simple answer is no. I don't have that kind of study. I think you make an interesting point. There are so many variables that go into it. Literally, some of it's going to come down to what kind of clothing is the subject wearing. If somebody's got a really thick sweatshirt on, for example, then maybe the prongs go into the sweatshirt, but they're not having any effect on the person. So there are so many things that can go into it. But again, my point is not to substitute my judgment for the departments about these different options, and the taser can and has been effective in terms of ending situations without deadly force being necessary. But it's also, like the canines, a tool where there's risk involved, where there's complexity involved, and the scrutiny that it deserves should kind of reflect that.
Thank you. Is there any other members from the board have any questions, comments? Okay, so I will be opening this up to the public. Thank you again for the presentation. Are there any members from the public that have comments or questions regarding this item?
I haven't had time to review the packet. There you are. I thought you had left. I was just wondering, as we were talking about looking at through different lenses, or maybe even different cases, I think like a big concern in Stanislaus County and in Modesto is the high amount of people with mental health issues who are being arrested, and, the lack of de-escalation, because I have witnessed it myself, because I've worked in social services, and also through the unhoused lens, because we saw a stat last year, I think it was last year, and there was like 1,000 either citations or arrests to people who are unhoused, which I find insanely high and disturbing, because that's not helping fix the issue. So maybe that could also be something to look at further. I don't know, just some thoughts, because I know that's something like the group that we've come to CPRB, that's something we have wanted to look more into, especially our unhoused neighbors. And we are seeing, as the economy in a looming recession, they think, more and more people are becoming unhoused, and we're having a larger community of people in severe need. So just some questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other member from the public that would like to speak on this item?
Yeah, thanks again. I've said this before. I think when the last report, which was only like a 6-month report, the first one came out. This is good to see. It's good to shine sunlight on this stuff. I know it's probably, it's not easy to read and say, oh, some stuff could have been done better, wasn't done right, but this is good. It's like pulling the Band-Aid off, right? Now you can clean the wound and sterilize and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to see that there's recommendations and then the department changed policy, that's like what this is all about, right? I like to see the, honesty in the report about some of the incidents, and the evaluations, of the incidents. The canine, issue is a good example of that. Um, to see that, one of the incidents where a canine was deployed, that the articulated cause for deployment was questionable, that's obviously concerning for somebody like me, but it's better than finding out, because a family member of the person that was bit, is talking about it in public and we're not getting like an official look at it. And then people start speculating as to what happened, right? So, like I said, even though this might be a tough, uncomfortable process, this is good. And I think it's a good process that we're going through, doing this. I like, when there's comments about, when that it's common for dogs to remain engaged because the person is remaining resistant, but but that being bitten by a dog can kind of give you that natural reaction to resist a dog attacking you, right? That the fact that that's just pointed out, in this report. Um, I've said things similar to that, but it's great to see, folks that do this for a living, looking at actual cases that have happened and putting that opinion, down on paper. I think it, legitimizes those concerns, that people in the community have been making, for at least a decade, or at least when I've been kind of involved, in these aspects. Um, the What I feel like is still needed is a little bit more publicity and outreach to the community. I was doing, just a quick look at the City of Modesto's Facebook page. I see lots of flyers about events. I didn't see anything about this meeting coming up, and this is going to be the meeting where the report is released. And I'm not sure when it, if it was just literally printed out and set out there before anybody else, public, got a chance to see it. If it was online at all, I didn't see it. If it was online even a few days ago, that would have been nice to post about and publicize, give people a chance to look at it, before this meeting. Like I said, I don't know, maybe it wasn't ready. I'm certainly going to look at it more, from now, until the next meeting. But I think that we do need some more publicity about this meetings. We saw the turnout at the King Kennedy Center meeting. I think that if we're publicizing that this report was going to be released, that maybe more folks would come to these meetings. And I'm out of time. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments from anyone in the public? Alrighty, seeing none, I will be closing public comments. And is there anyone from the board that have any other further comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Steve. And on to the next item. Staff comments and reports. Steve? Independent Police Auditor update, please.
Good evening, Steve Conley, Independent Police Auditor. Just when you thought it was safe to go on with your evening, I just have a very brief follow-up item unrelated to the report, and I got confused. I talked to Board Member Christensen before the meeting, and I was mixing up my subcommittees a little bit. But I just wanted to flag for the Youth Arrest Subcommittee. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to meet with some representatives of an organization that does nationwide work in terms of youth in the criminal justice system. They actually had some interesting ideas. Some I was less enamored of, but they do a lot of work with departments and in terms of policy ideas and trainings that kind of are designed to help recognize that youth are differently situated than adults in terms of their reactions and decision making and everything else. And the goal is to equip officers to deal with them in the most effective ways possible. Similar to what the commenter was saying about the people with mental illness, absolutely officers need to have the background and training to recognize and adjust to get the best possible outcomes in those situations. So I wanted to just flag that, and hopefully the next time your subcommittee gets together, I can give you a little bit more information about that and see if it's anything you'd be interested in pursuing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is it. Thanks.
All right. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions? All right. Seeing none, this is open to the public as well. Is there any public comments? Good. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I will be closing public comments. Again, anyone from the board have any further comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to board comments and reports. At this time, board members may make a brief announcement or report briefly on their activities. Policy goal number 8, review use of force policy to minimize likelihood of death resulting from use of force.
I have a comment. I attended the Patterson City Council meeting last night. The meeting started at 7. I left at around 10:30 because there was so many people there and so many comments that took place over the video incident on April the 1st, where a person was stopped and the incident led to the individual being tasered and then a weapon pulled out. And so there were speakers from every nationality there, and they were expressing basically their overall concern about the way they were being policed. And so it was really clear that this is not about one particular incident. And there were, mixed opinions about the video, but most came away with that having a bad attitude is not a crime, and that there was, in my opinion, a consensus that the police officer overreacted. And based on the fact that officers are held to a higher standard and they receive or should receive training in de-escalation, that that situation should not have resulted in a person being tased or having a gun pointed at them. The good news was that several speakers kept mentioning about Modesto, and we are perceived as being the model. And what they were suggesting was to have a community citizens review board with an independent auditor, possibly partnering with the city of Modesto. So I was really proud to hear that Modesto is standing out in terms of being the model for the rest of the county. I'm sure there'll continue to be more discussions about that incident, and then just how people are traumatized. When you're staring at a gun, when you're looking at a gun or even being tased, and how, who the officers get paid. Citizens pay, taxpayers pay the officers. And so there's an expectation that the officers are going to do more, take more responsibility in de-escalating. Of course, in a situation, it's everybody's responsibility to de-escalate. But again, just reminding that the officers get paid, they get trained, and they're held to a higher standard. And so regardless of, and even looking at policies and procedures, there's questions about that. Regardless of how the situation turns out, anytime you have that many people disgusted by the way they're being treated, and not just on this one occasion, and not just Black people, but people of every nationality complaining about the way they're being policed, then, I look at it as an opportunity more than a problem. It will be a problem if the departments are not as smart as the MPD in trying to do something, because these situations that get handled one way or the other. Either you'll find yourself on national news and you'll find yourself getting involved in a lot of different lawsuits, or else you take a proactive approach like I think Modesto was doing. So compliments to Modesto for being viewed as a good example to remedying certain situations.
Thank you, Wendy. On to policy goal number 1, improve relations between the community and the department.
I'll take that one. Don't have a whole lot to add. We have attempted a couple of meetings and not had enough consensus of attendees to take a lot of steps forward, but know that we're meeting and working on it. Worked yesterday to set it our next meeting time. And Mr. Connolly, I actually tracked with you earlier because the focus that we're on right now is around the know your rights concept, and what we're looking at is know your rights is just a component of it. There's other components that are on our hit list. So what you were sharing with me actually may fit as one of the components. So I sort of tracked with you, didn't even recognize the difference. So when you share the summary with Wendy, I wouldn't mind having that as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy goal number 3, reduce youth arrests, particularly among Latino youth.
We don't have a report, but I do have a question to see. In fact, we're going to be talking more about data at the last town hall that we had in February. We just kind of did an introductory thing, but you know, in order to understand more about the context of what's happening, we have had a few other meetings where we do have a list of questions that we would like to present to you and to the Sheriff's Department. And you know, one of those things will be kind of taking a look at what the youth arrest data is like and more context behind the data. What was it about? You know, was it due to calls? Was it due to traffic stops? Was it due to, you know, what initiated the first incidents and things like that?
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. All right, moving on to future agenda items. Yeah.
You have to turn your microphone on.
I'm figuring this out, you know, Simi's challenging me over here. So Scotty Douglas, Deputy City Manager, just gave a quick update on the future agenda items. So what we have scheduled so far is upcoming is the Modesto Police Department response to OIR's annual report for January 2024 to December 2024. And then the next one is community engagement and activities presentation. That'll be coming up. And then also we'll be scheduling a revisit of the 2025 CPRB calendar of topics, as we discussed earlier. You know, things sometimes are a little bit more timely if something comes up. And so we, you know, you as a board approved moving forward with somewhat of an open schedule for remaining parts of the year, but we will bring this back so that we can update calendar topics for the rest of this annual year.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that came up tonight, I think it'd be good to have a report, quick report on the mental health. And now that the dispatch is done much differently than it was a year ago, and there is a lot of sending out mental health professionals. There's one on every shift or whatever whatever we're doing. I think it is a underlying question that it would just be nice to get a progress report on how that is and how effective it is. And maybe some of the folks that are those folks that go out on the calls to maybe share a little bit of what their experience, because that is an issue. And I think my recollection is we've done a pretty good job of trying to accommodate that, but obviously the system's never going to be perfect. But if we get some updates on that, and that would be good, whether next month or whenever. I'm not talking about a full-blown report. I'm just, you know, how's
Quick
it going?
update.
Yeah, just how's it going? Because that's something that is near and dear to everybody here, for sure.
Okay, we've captured that. Thank
Ken,
you.
it is now.
Your microphone's going off and on by itself. Go ahead.
There was a comment from the public early on in the meeting wanting to know about the status of arbitration with one of the officers that was involved in a fatal incident. Question for city staff, are you able to comment on that?
There's no update at this time. I have no update on any time frame of that arbitration.
Nancy?
So Chief Gillespie, will you be prepared? The May agenda item is your response. Is that timing still good for you? Yes, I did.
I saw it was on future agenda items. I didn't see that it was May, but we can, as we get closer to the May meeting, if I appreciate the thoroughness and the thoughtfulness from the OIR group. I want to make sure that I do my due diligence and provide the same level of response. If I'm prepared at the May meeting, absolutely. But as we get closer, I may ask to push it at the latest to June. But if I can have a thorough response and prepared by May, I'm happy to do that. But I don't want to lock myself into that if I'm not.
Thanks for calling that out. I mean, just because of the order on here doesn't necessarily mean that that's coming up next month and the month after that. These are just future topics.
Okay.
I just thought that was what we had set for the May meeting, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
I will try my best.
No, and I understand if you're not prepared. I mean, last year you were traveling and things did get delayed. I was just trying to confirm if it would be the agenda item.
No pressure.
Okay, and then lastly for me, I was wanting to get an update on, are we getting a grant again for the NACOL conference this year? And if we're going to be inviting any board members.
I'll work with Chief Gillespie. I know that your staff is the ones that submitted for that, I believe, this last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, was that part of our Calvic grant?
I think it was a one-time.
Got it.
from what I remember.
But we can look and see if there's potential other funding sources or options to do that.
I feel like it's a really good experience, and as many board members as we can get to go to that conference. If you guys can, please look into that and then give us an update, hopefully next meeting.
All right, we'll look into it.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to thank the public again for coming out. I appreciate you guys coming out here every time. We do this for you. And so with that said, our next meeting is going to be May 21st. No public comments. Our next meeting will be the future agenda item. After that, there's public. Okay. Are there any public comments in regards to the future agenda items?
The end of the last agenda item, but I didn't want to be rude and be like, hey, stop. But I know I asked this before, is to clarify, isn't there a public comment after every agenda item? Because the public comment in the beginning is for things not on the agenda. So there should be a public comment after every agenda item. And I'm using up my time, but I wanted to comment on the last, just to agree with what Wendy said about the incident that we saw in Patterson. And the need to promote this board and do more outreach and publicity around it, so that we'll just say other law enforcement departments in the county won't shy away so much. I'm trying to use the best language I can. Won't shy away so much from the idea of oversight and accountability in their department that we've seen some quotes from the sheriff in the local media. I think this is a good process, and maybe the promotion of this can sway others to be involved in similar thing. And just wanted to agree with Wendy 100% about the kind of back and forth about the first video that came out and the second video. There was even some public officials saying, oh, this is concerning. And then when the second video came out, oh, I understand why the officer. No, just being, we don't know what that guy in the car was going through when he got pulled over. You could have a death in the family, or maybe his passenger had just broken up with him, or you don't know why somebody has an attitude. But again, Wendy said it just right. We have to hold officers to a higher standard. And in my humble opinion, in that video, that officer escalated the situation by prodding at that individual, by saying, what's your problem? Why are you acting like that? Why not just do your job? No reason to say things like that. My humble opinion on the matter and why I agree with you. The canine issue that I brought up earlier is another good issue. to point out with the sheriff's department. A few years ago, Eloy Gonzalez was killed after 8 minutes of an incident with the sheriff after a canine was sicked on him, and then in response to being attacked by a dog, brandished a hatchet at the dog, and then was shot and killed after 8 minutes. That's not de-escalation. That's not taking your time with somebody with mental health issues, and that is why we need oversight for the sheriff's department. And with my last 30 seconds, I'll just reiterate my comment about the importance of doing outreach. Before the last meeting that was canceled in March, there was an incident where seems like maybe an armed individual had a shootout with the police. You know, in the reports, it was about 100 shots being fired. I actually came down here. I didn't do my due diligence and look at if this meeting was canceled. So I was actually here and found out it had been canceled. But that's another good example to show why, and maybe this, why I was making this could be a future agenda item, exactly how the board interacts with the department. I know that they can't say anything that would be, you know, talking about an ongoing investigation, but I know it's in the charter. And we heard about it with the, what's it called? The MERT or whatever it's called, how there are meetings with the review board after incidents like that. And even if you can't say any specifics about an ongoing investigation, it's real important to let the community know that you met, that you discussed it, that, you know, you are in contact with the department and are talking about it. I think that goes a long way with the community of just knowing what the board is up to when there's a incident that's in the news like that one and these headlines. And I don't know when the decision was made to cancel the meeting, but it wasn't a good look for that incident to happen and then have the meeting canceled and not really any statements from the board about the incident, even if it's just we're in discussion with the department. You know, there's an investigation going on, and I've gone over my time. But thank you again.
Thank you. All right, and with that being said, is there any other public comments? Seeing none, I will be closing public comments, and the meeting has been adjourned until May 21st, 2025 at 5:30. Thank you.